Sabotage Studios just launched their Dawn of Equinox update for Sea of Stars, and this changes so much about Sea of Stars that Sabotage Studios actually sponsored this video so I could take some time to tell you guys all about the plethora of new features and balance updates. Follow the link in this video's description to learn more about Sea of Stars and this incredible new free update. Now, most of you probably already know from my full review of Sea of Stars last year that I loved this game already. That video wasn't sponsored, and you should check it out if you haven't already. And now I'm over the moon to tell you that with this Dawn of Equinox update, it's better than ever. Upon loading up Sea of Stars after the latest update, the changes are immediately apparent, with some brand new key art, new difficulty modes at the start, and a revised game intro sequence. Sabotage Studio lets you know immediately that things are different. The first thing that new players will be doing in Sea of Stars is getting hands-on with the combat system with a tiny tutorial and a brief introduction to Zale, Valere, and Garl, which is a complete overhaul from the previous flashback sequences of the 1.0 release. One of the other quality of life improvements that I was also thankful to see off the bat is that there's a readily available way to skip past the introduction sequence if you are replaying the game in New Game Plus mode. Throughout the introduction, you can spot these little pedestals with the Solstice diploma floating above them. Interacting with this presents the player with the ability to jump past the entire origin story sequence of playing as young Zale, Valere, and Garl, and jumping straight into the shoes of full-fledged Solstice warriors Zale and Valere. However, you might not want to, because all of the in-game dialogue has also been given another once-over. Nothing substantially changing the overall message or events of the game or anything, but about 3/4 of the dialogue underwent some form of revision or refinement according to the developers. But once things really get underway, there are some pretty major substantive changes under the hood that actually change the way you'll be playing Sea of Stars. Or should I say, it will change the way you and your friends and family will be playing Sea of Stars. Because now, Sea of Stars has full-fledged 3-player co-op, and if you're anything like me, you're probably wondering, how the heck does 3-player co-op work in a turn-based RPG? Well, if you had asked me about this 2 months ago, I'd say you're crazy, it could never be done, it's a fool's errand to even try. But now, I'm just surprised that I haven't seen this or anything like it ever before, and I am wildly impressed at how seamless and fun it is. Multiplayer co-op is immediately available from the start of the game. As soon as you take control of little Zale or Valere, player 2 can drop in, or with the press of a button, they can drop back out at any time. While traversing the world map, everything behaves as you might expect from playing other kinds of 2-player action RPGs or adventure titles. Everyone gets to run around, climb on things, throw the grappling hooks around, and so on. But when combat is initiated is where things start getting really interesting. During combat, all players can take turns issuing commands to any of the 3 characters in combat. Player 2 isn't restricted to just issuing commands to whomever they were controlling on the overworld or anything. And that's a pretty key feature of Sea of Stars' combat system, where you need to constantly be able to juggle characters in and out of the back row in order to break the locks on enemy skills before they can deal massive damage to your party. And speaking of those locks, there's a massive update here that I'll talk about shortly that really changes the flow of battle even in single-player mode. Don't worry, I'll come back to that soon. So players alternate issuing commands to the party members as they see fit. You can also pass the baton to other players if you want, giving them control back for that turn. So the players pretty much alternate issuing commands without having to be tied to a single character in combat, if that makes sense. However, even when it's not the player's turn to issue commands, all players are in charge of getting timing button press bonuses to damage and defenses. So just like in the original release of Sea of Stars that always ensured the player had something to do or some puzzle to solve, Sabotage has also figured out a way to make even turn-based combat engage all players in co-op, even when it's not actually their turn. And there's not really any downside to doing this either. Any successes added by the second player affect gameplay in a positive way, or in other words, the player is never penalized for playing in co-op mode. For this gameplay, my friend Dane played a bit of co-op with me for a brief 4 or 5 hour session, and we did a lot of extended experimentation to find out exactly how this system works. And what we found out is that even if the controlling player whiffs the bonus damage on their attack, or forgets to press a button for the damage bonus, player 2 can absolutely carry player 1, or vice versa. But if both players nail the timing, the bonus damage stacks. Effectively, this does decrease the difficulty of Sea of Stars somewhat, but I think that that's kind of the way teamwork is supposed to work, right? But that said, there are additional new difficulty modes and relics that you can enable or disable to make the combat better suited to your preferred combat difficulty. When Dane and I were playing, one of our favorite things to do was to figure out little ways to use some of the new traversal features to our advantage. When playing in multiplayer mode, a player can hold one of the shoulder buttons in order to get put into a floating bubble that returns the bubbled player near the other player's sprite. So maybe solving a puzzle might require a player to jump off a ledge and move some blocks around or something. Now, instead of having to traverse up a ladder or retrace their steps, we could just hold the bumper to warp back to the other player who is basically holding our spot. This was mainly added for the sake of in case a player got stuck somewhere or some unintended consequences arose from using the new multiplayer navigation, but it's kind of one of my new favorite mechanics in Sea of Stars. And for the purpose of this video, Dane was able to help me get some of this awesome 2-player co-op footage, but what's even more awesome that I haven't been able to show you yet is that co-op mode actually supports up to 3 players from the very start. Oh yeah, and back to those locks that I started talking about before. There's a new function built into the game that was planned from the start but didn't make the initial cut. These are the new mystery locks. In the 1.0 release of Sea of Stars, when enemies cast spells or abilities, you could interrupt them by dealing damage in a type corresponding to the displayed icons above the enemy. These are the locks, but you could always see what those icons were. In order to up the ante a bit and provide some additional challenge, new enemies now won't show you what these locks are until you've already successfully hit them with the corresponding damage type. For instance, if their lock is one slashing attack and the other is a bludgeoning attack, you won't see those show up in the lock until you've hit them with a slashing or bludgeoning attack for the first time, breaking and revealing the component of that lock. To help further balance this new feature out though, some of the character abilities have a new ability to reveal one or more of these locks, giving more strategic reasons to branch out and try other skills that you might have been neglecting in previous runs. Further adding to the reasons to branch out and try new abilities is that new combo points stick around after battle. Combat points are earned during combat as you fight enemies, but they used to disappear after each encounter, so you wouldn't get a chance to see or use a lot of these awesome combos very often, except for maybe during long epic boss fights. But now, fully filled up combo points stick around so you could lead a combat encounter with a combo rather than having to build up to them. So combo points are far more aplenty, but other balance tweaks have been added, such as increasing the cost of certain combo healing abilities. And then there's just a ton of other quality of life improvements that will make the inner completionist in me so much happier. For instance, now the inventory is unlocked, so that means you can open every single chest and never get a message telling you that the inventory is full. And now you can hold unlimited ingredients, so maybe you'll be more inclined to cook more dishes more often. And then the parrot relic that you could previously use to ping the parrot who would tell you how much stuff was left on a given island has been completely overhauled. Now you're shown visual indicators of how many treasures and conches and other stuff there are to be found on each of the world's islands. I already 100% completed this game about a year ago, and this feature would have been a godsend to have. There's also a new language options and new music that's been added, a whole new cinematic, and so much customization through these new relics that you can collect and unlock that I haven't even had time to go into yet, but suffice it to say, this update is huge. The Dawn of Equinox update brings a ton of new quality of life features and improvements that makes Sea of Stars more exciting than ever. Whether you're diving into co-op mode with friends, experimenting with the revamped Combat 2.0 system, or revisiting the old content with all new options, there's plenty here for both newcomers and longtime fans. And best of all, it's completely free. So if you're curious and you want to check out the Dawn of Equinox update for yourself, click the link in this video's description to dive back into Sea of Stars. Don't miss this chance to experience everything that Sabotage Studios has packed into this epic RPG. Thanks again to Sabotage Studios for sponsoring this video, and if you enjoyed this breakdown and want more RPG news and updates, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.